who is really disabled? My younger brother Johnny was very ill when he came into this world. There was something wrong with his brain, and it looked like he might be blind, too. I was only 6 years old, so I don't remember much about it, but I do know that there wasn't a doctor in all of Bermuda that knew what to do for him. There was only one hospital in Bermuda called St. Edward's, and if they didn't have the specialist or couldn't do it the test, you had to go to America for help. So we left Bermuda to get Johnny some help, and I wound up sharing a bedroom with my younger brother in a small apartment in a big complex in New York. I had never shared a bedroom before, and I hated it. He'd throw toys, want a glass of water in the middle of the night, and yep, those diapers smelled. My parents told me I'd get used to it. I didn't. So one night I taught Johnny to climb out of his crib and crawl out of the room right into my parents' bedroom. I hid under the covers and laughed when I heard my parents groaning about being woken up in the middle of the night. My mother asked me if I had something to do with it. I just responded by asking her if I was adopted and could I please be returned to my real parents. We'd reached a standoff here, but the kid still stayed in my room. The good news is that Johnny did get some better. He was able to see a little, able to run, able to be the annoying little brother that so many younger brothers can be. Yes, if I went out to play, I had to take him with me. Yes, since he was awkward and clumsy, I had to keep him out of trouble. And yes, when he ran out the front door and down the street stark naked, I had to pretend to the neighbors that I still liked him. One sunny day, I got a taste of what it was like to be disabled. I had this great idea that I could do an incredible leap off the slide in the playground. That would impress the neighbors and really make my mark. Oh, I must have looked grand flying through the air all the way down to the ground where I twisted my leg and broke it. So now there were 2 disabled kids in my bedroom, and I was the one in the wheelchair. I had a cast up to my hip. I couldn't go to school, dance class, or the playground for 3 months. Sometimes I would be all alone in the apartment with that cast up to my hip and in the wheelchair. It was more than lonely. Once when my mom went to take the garbage outside, she didn't come back for a very long time. I was so frightened that I'd be all alone forever and ever that I called the telephone operator just to hear someone's voice. That lady was very sweet to me and talked to me until my mom came home. Since then, I'm always very thankful for the kindness of perfect strangers. What a gift. I'd like to say that the experience made me a better sister, and maybe it did for a while. But some years later, when we had moved to a house, I tried to stuff him in an old china closet in the basement. I was suddenly so upset I'd made him cry. I'd promised myself I wouldn't make anybody cry again. I begged his pardon and his silence. He was such a sweet little boy. He promised not to tell and get me into trouble. It was really better than I deserved. Yes, Johnny was different, and it wasn't surprising that some of our neighbors weren't kind either. Johnny was a cute, skinny little kid who liked to play Superman wearing a dish towel for a cape. He'd run around outside hoping to be included in the gang of kids that went from yard to yard, playing ball, catching fireflies, riding bicycles. But he was strange to them and awkward. If you were wearing something that didn't look good on you, he'd let you know right to your face. He was honest to a fault. Lots of faults. So I was surprised one day when I saw him approached by one of our next-door neighbors who were particularly unpleasant. Actually, this family hated us. They hated my brother Joe. They hated me. They thought we were foreigners, un-American. I never thought to warn Johnny away from them because he was just a little boy. What bother could he be to these neighborhood bullies? But when I saw Johnny on his tricycle pedaling happily after one of those neighborhood teenagers, back to his house, alarm bells went off. I followed the two of them. The teenager had Johnny follow him into the backyard of his house, which was surrounded by a very high fence. Nobody could see in to see what might happen. When I got to the opening of the backyard, I couldn't believe my eyes. Standing at the end of the backyard, other children were holding sticks ready to take a swing. I stepped in front of Johnny and told him that Mom wanted him home now. Being a sweet little boy, he did as he was told, turned the tricycle around, and went home. I stayed until he was out of sight. I stared at each one of those faces. I didn't ever want to forget what such hatred looked like. I turned to go home, and none of them moved, and nobody said anything. I suppose they could have hurt me, but I was too mad to care. Sometimes I don't think I was the greatest sister to Johnny, but he said I was the best sister ever. I know it's not true. I got impatient, I got annoyed, and sometimes I was downright rude. But I remember that day and the courage that somehow came from very deep within. And I appreciate that he loved me. He's gone now, but he'll always be in my heart. And thinking of that day, he'll always bring me courage.